If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey everybody, it's Kristen and
Eleanor, and we're back in the studio with Tim Beeman, the Podfather.
we took a sabbatical.
Yes.
Yes, in the
Some of us went further than others, but
yeah. So you left the country, but we went to the library.
I took a break from reading, to be honest. Well, the one we're going to talk about today,
Yeah.
I read, but it was nice. My brain needed a little bit of break from the books.
Oh, golly, not me, man. I dived into the other books that I've been reading. So I did some
good for you.
business development books called Edgy Conversations. That was a lot of fun. And then
nice.
I read Anxious People, which was kind of nonfiction fun. And seems like there was something else that went down, and I can't remember what it was. But, yeah, I just expanded my reading a little bit.
I love it.
Yeah,
Good for
I did
you.
enjoy that.
Well, today we're back and we're going to take a deep dive
Absolutely.
over several episodes about metabolism.
Yes, and we've luckily here in North Carolina, and I'm sure in other states too, we have a lot of talented, smart people that write books.
We do, and we love highlighting local North Carolina authors.
Yeah, and this particular author, I was thinking he was here in Winston-Salem, but I believe he's in Asheville, but had been in Los Angeles. But his brother is the one that I think I know about here in Winston-Salem. So, who is our author?
Our author is Dr. Jade Teta. He is author of Next Level Metabolism, The Art and Science of Metabolic Mastery. But this is not his first book. He's had several other books, and he has a practice, I believe, with his brother called Metabolic Living. And
He's got some interesting educational background. He's a biochemist. He has a degree in biochemistry. And then he also did the naturopathic study and is a practicing naturopathic physician.
he does like a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
So he's an author, a podcaster. He was a personal trainer for 25 years. The degree in biochemistry, like you said. The practitioner of naturopathic medicine. He says he's taken several life coaching classes and has certifications. He's also really into philosophy, as well as like relationships. On his website, he's got an interesting bio where he shares all of this, and then he says that he did extra shifts in couples counseling in school. I'm fascinated by romance and read research on the topic regularly. I also went through an affair and a divorce. I betrayed my wife and was betrayed by the person I fell in love with. It was the best and worst experience of my life. Have you ever had an experience where you were so hurt, disappointed, and embarrassed by your behavior that you hit rock bottom and became a new person as a result? Yep, that's happened to me. That's why I write, blog, and podcast so much on relationships and romance. But he blogs and writes and teaches about all of these things. He's just a really super interesting man. I would have loved to have him as a guest on the show.
Yeah, maybe sometime we can look forward to that. I'm charmed by him. I like his writing style. I like his vulnerability. Like you just, wow, that's, opening up a lot.
Right.
To share a common shared experience, and that's a Brene Brown thing, I believe, that we've talked about before, is the common shared experience, and that we are all different, but we all experience similar obstacles and challenges. And this particular book, I think, is written because people want to lose weight, and so he's addressing that And I love his multi-dimensional approach and the way that he pulls in aspects of our human experience that other people addressing fat loss don't seem to appreciate.
Like mindset and stress and recovery.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that as we get into it. But I just think this is a fun guy. I've listened to his podcasts, or some of them. I actually went out to look at the product line that he advocates for and his hormone type. We're getting ahead of ourselves. But anyway, yeah, this is I think I'm going to probably recommend this book at one level. It's a little bit intricate, and I have a love of the intricacy. So I don't know how this fits with everybody's reading preference.
That's true, but I think that he has a knack for telling stories.
Oh, absolutely.
Analogies.
Yeah,
really
they're so good.
Cool analogies.
Yes.
That makes, someone be like, oh, yeah, I get it. That it snaps into place. So I really appreciated that, even though some of the stuff was really in the weeds and intricate about.
Well, the other thing that he does that I maybe overdid, but maybe not, is it mnemonics? He has several mnemonics,
the 4
like
M's and the
REE, NEAT, TEF, EAT, HEC, SHMEC, AIM, TDEE. And after a while you think, oh God, what does all that stand for? But it is a good way to remember it. And he reinforces it as he goes along. So maybe we should start talking about what he shares in this book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he says, stop being a dieter, become a metabolic detective.
So you're right. He does. I think he has spent his career helping people achieve fat loss, and he's gone the route of prescribing diets, and I think he's grown as a human, and that he has collected all this knowledge, and he does share a story where he's training a woman, maybe perimenopausal, and she kind of stops and looks at him and says, "Who do you think you are? You don't know anything about me. How can you help me? If you're a man not experiencing, you're putting me through what you think you can do, not me." So I think he's learned.
Yeah, and he said he was so grateful to her. He said it was a difficult exchange, but it's one that redirected his path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that he has taken all of his life experience and all of his training and come to this point where he wants to help you become that metabolic detective, help you understand the language of your metabolism, which we'll go into the science and the art and the science. Did you like how he said that?
I'm so glad, because that's on the front of the cover of his book too, The Art and Science of Metabolic Mastery. And when I was involved in medical education, that was one of the things we talked a lot about, was the practice of medicine, repeated, but the art of it. And there is healing can take many different forms, and the practitioner who has broad education may be able to help the patient more than someone who's been through a very narrow educational path. Because I think when we talk about humanities and the arts, generally people studying dissect that out and they take all the sciences and do not take much of the humanities. And so I think our practitioners, and probably one of the reasons that we have more functional medical, integrative medical people than we've ever had before, a more acceptance of chiropractic and osteopathic medicine, the allopathic MDs that most of us are familiar with, have some competition, more competition now. And maybe it's not competition, but collaboration, that patients now have a team that can help them. But it is the art of how do you paint the canvas, or how do you create the symphony, which instruments are you going to use, how are you going to have the tones go.
Right, and I think,
and that's what I think he has that background. I think he brings that into his story too.
Absolutely, and the art is kind of the art of working with people as well. With his life coaching experience and his mindset side and emotional side. And also, he speaks to understanding that, yes, we want to be evidence-based. We want to look at the science, but we also have to realize that science is always changing and there's so much that we don't know. And so we can use the science as our guide in addition to using our experience and what we see.
That's the art.
That's the art.
I think.
Yeah.
For me, that's the art. And that's why different practitioners do it differently. Because their experiences and context. Which, when we read the Psychology of Money, which is way off the track here, but that advisor was saying, I can't tell you what to do with your money because your context and reference to money is different than mine, which is what I think I really appreciate Dr. Teta doing is we are individuals. Our experience is different. Our bodies are different. And so a practitioner has to listen to that. And we've talked about listening to your body. And here we're talking about practitioners listening to their clients or their patients. And it is a skill because a lot of times our minds will just make up assumptions about the situation and not really, like this woman told him at that early stage of his career, you're not listening to me. You have a preconceived idea of what will work for me and it's not working.
Right.
So could we change, please?
So he starts off the book with, you might think you know everything there is to know about metabolism. If you work in the health and wellness field, you've likely done your fair share of research on the topic, yet you still might be struggling to make sense of the overload of conflicting information you've come across. Or maybe you're just someone who loves fitness, and by now you might think no outside source could possibly teach you about mastering your own metabolism, because no one understands your unique physiology better than you. No matter how much you think you do or don't know about it, I'm here to tell you metabolism is not exactly what you think it is. So I thought we would start just kind of explaining what is metabolism.
I think that's a great idea because he does something in here that I saw that I went, that is so interesting. He calls it the metabolism, like the neuromuscular system, the skeletal system, the nervous system, the endocrine, the metabolism. He's calling it almost, and in my mind, it's a physiological concept, but I think he's stretching that for me, and I liked going there. So start the conversation about groundwork for metabolism.
Okay, so metabolism, what is it? It's a sum of complex chemical reactions that take place within our cells to provide energy. A very simplistic explanation of it is that we take the calories from our food we eat, couple that with oxygen, and our cells can generate energy for bodily functions that keep us alive.
Well, not always, because that would be the aerobic metabolism, but anaerobic does not require the oxygen.
Okay, so sometimes coupling it with oxygen.
Yeah, but it is a study of energetics, isn't it?
Yeah, so more than a decade ago, I took a whole college master level course on advanced metabolism and I actually got the textbook out.
Oh, good.
And I'm like, I don't know if this is going to help me with the podcast. It was a little too deep, but so that just tells you how complex chemical metabolism can be. And then that's a super simplified definition of what we're talking about.
Yeah, but burning fuel to create the work that our cells do to make our organs do, to make our body do.
Yes. And so we talked about how he was great at analogies. His first analogy that I really got on board with is that he says we can think about metabolism as the ultimate barometer and thermostat. It's always changing its response based on conditions to which it's exposed. Much like your thermostat in your house, maybe it's set to 70 and it's constantly striving to maintain that number, and it makes the appropriate adjustments based on the temperature it's sensing around it. So your metabolism strives to maintain that balance or homeostasis.
Yes.
And
Big word, huh, Tim?
Yes.
I knew that would make Eleanor happy.
Yeah, and if we get to hormesis, I'll be really excited, which we do.
I love your love of big words, Eleanor. And so from a primal sense, I appreciated this in the book, too, that he reminds us our metabolism's job is to keep us alive long enough to reproduce.
Oh yeah, no, that one gets me every time I see that, because I think that's evolutionarily true, and yet I don't like it, because after reproduction, am I useless?
Ah, yeah.
So that really when we talk about the 4Ms and such, I think I want to talk more when we get there.
Yeah, for as much as he includes like person-centered approach, there's a couple things in there that he's like, your metabolism doesn't care if it's convenient or not, or your metabolism doesn't. So he just kind of lays it out. This is your metabolism. It's a basic primal feature. It's gonna
react. It is set to do things, and so whatever the forces on it, it's going to respond and adapt. And that's one of his principles, is adaptability, and that it will move. It's not going to stay where it is. And knowing that, he has some really good ideas about what you do as an individual to take advantage of that adaptability. Yeah.
And so from that primal standpoint, the most significant threat that we face is starvation.
Or being eaten.
Or being eaten.
Yeah.
So, and what are diets in the traditional sense? Mostly that large energy gap that feels like starvation to us. And he says that we're putting stress on the metabolism, and it's going to fight back with all its might. Mm-hmm. So remember we said stop being a dieter is one of the things he says in the book. And he references this all the time, that we've just been doing it wrong because our metabolisms should be like a rubber band, he says. And when we diet and we go to the extreme of all that exercise and a little bit of calories, we're stretching it so far that it becomes rigid. That rubber band becomes rigid, and that's not what we want.
And I kind of remember him talking about the rubber band snapping back. Like you can change, but if you're doing things improperly, that can snap back to where you were before, and maybe even go beyond where you were before, overshoot, and then put you in an even more unhealthy condition to recover from. Because it will reset itself eventually, but yeah.
So, genetics. What do you think about metabolism and genetics?
Well, I do think that you have... genetics, I always find that kind of fun, because what I think I know about the genes is they code for proteins. Well, we have other things in our body besides proteins. But as far as that goes, those proteins are structural, or they're chemical enzymes, or they're building blocks, for all of these things. So, yes, some of us have better genes for, maybe have a deficiency or a mutation in that coding that doesn't allow an enzyme to be made, or doesn't allow, I think the degradation of alcohol, there's some people who don't have alcohol dehydrogenase gene, so they have more difficulty degrading that, and they have extended exposure to the alcohol molecules, which can be damaging. So, yeah, I think genetics is an underpinning, and some of us are fortunate we might have a little better go of it. But there's this thing called epigenetics, which we're learning about, which is the study of what turns on and turns off, or suppresses or activates these genes. And those seem to be under exposure control. Whether it's environmental toxins or whether it's nutritional benefits,
And those are the kind of things that our metabolism adapts to and in response to, like, illness or stress, even hormonal changes as we age. So we'll get into that too, just some of the laws of metabolism that he brings up.
Yeah, this book is just fun. And if you can read it with a group of people, I think it might even be more fun, because it's going to stimulate a conversation like, wow, I didn't know that, or that's me. I'm doing this, and I need to read the next page to find out what he's going to tell me.
That would be fun. So, your metabolic rate. We think, I have a really slow metabolism or a fast metabolism. But do we even know what makes up that rate, or what it's called total energy expenditure, right? How are we burning calories? What are we doing? Why are we burning calories? So I had a client the other day ask me, I heard that you just burn calories while you sleep. Is that true?
Yep.
Yeah. So part of that total energy expenditure is your basal metabolic rate.
And he teased that out because there's another aspect to that. And I learned basal metabolic rate hundreds of years ago. And it's so much fun to think about, if you're laying out flat and you've been out flat for 12 hours not eating or moving, you're breathing, your heart is pumping, there's some muscle in those blood vessels, there's muscle action, and in your gut, there's some things that require energy. So what is that number for you and what is that number for me?
Well, it's based on different things. It's based on your body composition, your age, whether you're male or female, and those things determine it, and it's not easily influenced. That's kind of our basal rate. Sometimes
it keeps you alive.
Yeah, it keeps
at the minimum. If you're still in flat, how much is it going to take to keep you alive?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a larger number. It makes up 50 to 65% of total energy expenditure. So you burn several calories just from your organs and all the
Thank you.
Yes.
And that's what I say, it's the work to keep the system going. We feed the cells to do their jobs that they're designed to do, to keep us to where we can move around, find the mating partner, do the act, and then, produce the baby. And then according to him, that's all metabolism is about. Just to get us to that point.
Right.
Nothing about taking care of that progeny afterwards, which is required for success of this population evolutionarily. Okay, so that's the basal metabolic rate, and that's 60% of our total expenditure.
Yes. So then you have expenditure that is your exercise and your movement. So,
which I would say is all movement, right? There's a non-activity movement, and then there's the exercise movement. Right?
Oh, I get you. So you're resting versus all movement.
Yeah.
Well, I would include
point A to point B.
The thermal effect of food in there.
Okay, good.
Which is...
I forgot that. Yep, you're right.
Not necessarily movement, but thermogenics nonetheless. So you have your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is called NEAT, which I think is neat. So this is the energy expended for everything that is not sleeping, eating, or sports-like exercise. So you're gardening maybe, you're walking, you're cleaning the house, you're getting to and from. And, he brings up hunter-gatherers a little bit in this book.
Oh, yeah.
So when we were at that stage in life, we were just roaming quite a bit, right?
To find food,
To find food, yeah.
Right.
We weren't necessarily sprinting after it. We were just kind of roaming the earth looking for things.
Yeah, and I think now he kind of refers to that as the activities of daily living. Just what does it take to get us to move from point A to point B? We're not, racing to point A or B, and he says get those 10,000 steps or 20,000 steps. That's in a slow walk. It's not going to the gym and doing the burn and on the treadmill, sweat.
And I think this is a very important point here, and I try to drive this home with my clients, is that, what is walking going to do? But really, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, is a much larger percentage of our total energy expenditure, so like 15 to 20%, versus if you purposefully exercise, that's 5%.
I loved his diagram on that. He's got great diagrams in this book that summarizes his statements. But that, to me, I've known walking is good and is better maybe than sprinting, but now I really believe it based on this metabolic description.
Yeah, and he says a couple times in the book, I much rather you focus on moving and walking 10 to 20,000 steps a day, because if you're going to the gym for maybe an hour, but then you're sitting the rest of the day, which sadly is most of our lives, how they're set up, that is not as effective or healthy for you than just walking around and getting that movement in. So, yes, movement matters.
So us health geeks here at the book club are sitting down while we're talking to you, and I'm thinking we probably should be standing up.
We need walking desks, Tim.
Yeah. So anyway.
I have one.
I have one at home.
There's one over there?
Mine.
Yeah, right. So is that kind of like an overview of the total energy expenditure and get us set for another episode on this book?
I think so. So I hope you feel like you can understand what we're talking about with metabolism, what makes up our energy expenditure, who Jade Teta is, and then we'll dive into more of his concepts in the next episode.
Yeah, and I hope that one of the takeaways from what we talked about just now is relaxing a little bit about stressing over, I can't get to the gym, I don't have time to get to the gym, I know I need to go to the gym. Maybe you're okay if we look in more detail about what to do with this total energy expenditure and how you can build your lifestyle to take advantage of some of these points. And I'm Eleanor at 360 Health. Love to continue the conversation with you.
And I'm Kristen Norton, one of the registered dietitians at wellbalancednutrition.com, where we offer nutrition and wellness coaching. Please come visit us at wellbalancednutrition.com and set up your free clarity call today.
Views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.